Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TFTuesday Pod. My name is Zill. It's wonderful to be coming back to you all today after a very hectic weekend out at ShifterCon, which just had its first inaugural events. I was working as the events director there, as well as the head mod in the Discord chat, and I think it went quite well, and it was also a lot of fucking work, so I'm also glad that it is now complete. I know that there will be recordings of a lot of the different panels on the YouTube in a little bit of time. There's just technical issues we're sorting out on the back end, but overall it seemed like it was a smashing success of an event, and I'm really happy with how we were able to pull it off. So that's the main update from my end, and also it's fucking boiling outside on this spooky Halloween that we're recording on, which is very homophobic in my opinion. I'm joined by my illustrious co-host K-Libra. How you doing, K-Libra?
Terrible. It's been an awful month for me. So hi, don't worry about it, guys. I'll probably survive it. Other than that, I will take this Halloween to try and just play as much Silent Hill 2 as possible, because I've had it since release, thanks to one of my very generous friends, and I really want to just see how it plays out. It's been great so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Silent Hill, from what I've heard, from everything you've told me, it's been quite good, so...
Yeah, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked at how good it is, because I was really skeptical about it when I first heard about it, when I first seen it, and the controversy around the dev team that was doing it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, God, this is actually really great. And if you disagree, that's fine. I only really care if you agree to join our Patreon. That's really the most substantial thing that you can agree to do. And that way it can just, help keep this going. It takes so much time and work. God damn it, please. I'm begging.
It does.
Is it really sad? Does it make you really sad? Does it make you feel pity? Does it? Pay us money. You want robes, don't you? We need to expand our reach and our resources so we can start giving out the robes to this cult.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that. You said it was going to come once we had enough money, so...
We don't have enough money yet.
Money.
I said, keep giving your money.
Oh, no, I know. I'm agreeing with you. We just need more money.
Okay,
so,
good.
As
long as that's understood. I also understand that we have a guest here today, and I'd like them to introduce himself.
Hey there, I am Phrannd. I do a little online comic thing called Overstay, and currently the Kickstarter for the print edition of the book is ongoing, so I figured there's a whole lot of transformations and transformation-related content in there, and seems like a good place to come and talk about it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think when this episode comes out, it'll still be ongoing too, so it'll be a good reminder for folks to go and check it out, and we'll have a link in the show notes as well, just so people can check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was curious to hear a little bit just first about how you kind of got into transformation content broadly, and what kind of led to you kind of creating art in the first place.
So, I can kind of hit the beats that I think a lot of artists that are in this genre typically reference as things that were like, oh, is this awakening something in me moments from childhood and from adolescence. Man, I did love me some gargoyles, and the various episodes with Elisa's brother or Fox or what have you were definitely... formative, as was Batman the Animated Series with that one where Selena becomes the cat lady. That was but those are very standard. But for a long time, I've been doing online art for actually quite a long time. I started doing comics online in 2001, just for full context. So I'm pretty old into this stuff, and only post-corona did I actually start actively making stuff about this thing that I'm into. So basically I was just I kind of sat down and I was like, well, I've got this time, and I would really like to start making art seriously again, because I'd had a long period of time in my life where I wasn't really making the amount of art that I wanted to, and I was like, well, how can I fix this? How can I address this and start making things that I find captivating and will actually keep me motivated to make things? And I was like, I know what, I'll just draw some people turning into werewolves, and it kind of just spiraled downhill from there.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a spiral downhill. I'd say that's a trek uphill in terms of getting to do the shit that you're into.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I've really been extraordinarily fortunate to have, like, the reception that I have relative to what came before in terms of, like, this, it kind of had a synergistic effect to where I just continued to make more stuff, and it's not just werewolves. Like, I have a lot of other transformation sequences and a lot of stuff that I do that is Patreon exclusive, that is other more niche content, but it is usually charismatic predators or dragons and stuff like that. So
nice. If I can ask, what was the kind of art that you were doing before you finally bit the bullet and started to go into TF?
I mean, I did a general audience webcomic for a long time through high school and into college.
Oh, wow.
That was moderately successful. And then I just kind of petered out with art for a long time. And I had, like college for me was a very unpleasant time. Like, I hit a bunch of roadblocks about, like, well, I guess for me, I just like making art. And I just wanted to use art as a story-making medium. So, like, to tell a story rather than to have, like... So, when I went to college for art, I was kind of hitting a lot of walls with, like, people that were... my professors were more interested in, like, a conceptual artist, like, art background kind of thing than the craft of making art. But the comic I did, it was called Pointless back in the day. So if you can find that somehow, you may find me from eras way... long removed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. And I mean, it sounds like being able to kind of create TF content really kind of invigorated your entire approach towards art. Would you say that, like, you've run into any sort of, like, creatively drier periods again since, or has it been, like, a pretty constant sort of drive in terms of making art now?
So, like, with Corona, I basically started and I had like 6 months of unemployment where I was just getting really good checks from the government for various reasons. So, like, that from then on, I have basically made about 50 pages of comics. I made a lot more that the first 2 years. I have not had... The only struggles I've had are with my day job and having time to make stuff. I have way more ideas and desire to make stuff than I have, like, practical time to make it happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that front.
Yeah. It's just, like, the struggle is, like, I have 3 or 4 ideas for, like, long-running series that I could just do, most of which are, erotic and have TF overtones that would last. I have way more ideas than I have time to make them, unfortunately. So I have to kind of consider an opportunity cost when I'm making something and see, like, is this the best use of my time? And there's a lot of that thought, unfortunately. I'd rather just be able to make stuff, but that's c'est la vie.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. I mean, at least the willpower to do it is there, because a lot of people struggle to get the willpower. It's like a trinity you got to choose to. You can have the will and the ideas and the time, and you can only choose two.
Choose two, yeah. Well, if I was gonna choose two, I'd rather be where I am than where I've been historically with no will to do it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, in terms of will you, won't you, and stuff like that. One of the topics that people were wondering about was science versus magic, and people got their niches in that. And so I guess discussing both at some kind of length. So starting with science, and especially because there's a lot of really popular scenarios. So what are the popular ones that you know of that you can really get into for the sciencey stuff?
I mean, science-wise, you've always got... Well, the thing is, there's some overlap, because, if you have, infectious agents that spread through bites or other fluid contact, it's no different, really, than, curses that are transmitted the same way from, a drawing perspective, or even really a plot perspective. If you think about it, diseases are just science curses, really.
You could say that, but we are going to try to... But listen, we can't muddy it, because if we're going to conceptualize the things that they have in common, then people won't be satisfied in the butting of heads and people feeling angry that somebody has the wrong opinion. So, I mean, like, yeah, when it comes to science, yes, science ends up being like magic is just science that's just to be understood type of thing. Yeah, I understand that exists, but I mean, science usually boils down to something that can be measured, observed, repeated, controlled, and not just by like the experts, but can be shown to other people. And that's kind of how like I view science. Like you can really explain it to most people. And magic often is a sort of mastery thing, and depending on the universe, it can also be even hereditary, and therefore some people can be locked out of it. And I mean, like that's one of the defining things of like science and magic in terms of their division. But yeah, so like if you got to pick a popular science-y transformation trope, what are ones that you like or one that you like most?
So like I do really like the more egalitarian like viewpoint that comes with like not having cliques of people that are like keeping this knowledge to themselves, where science is more like everybody has access to this information, but maybe they don't have the technology or wherewithal to utilize it. But you do get cool stuff with science fiction where you can have virtualized transformation elements. So, like, you know, it can be all in a simulated world and it can do any number of things. And, you know, whatever the amount of sensory input the person who's undergoing it could vary. But, like, or you could do stuff like cyberpunky stuff where you're like, it's not exactly like you're turning into a monster or something, but you have like, hey, what if your arm was suddenly a clawed arm? And like there's all sorts of I do like science a lot for that sort of stuff where there's a certain granularity to some of it, and it's easier to put one's own mind into it than just I mean magic I guess is pretty easy to imagine, but like it doesn't have like a verisimilitude kind of thing to it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I really appreciate that sort of framing around, like, if it's related to science, there's, like, an ability to access it for everyone. Because I think it speaks to, like, this kind of idealized hope that we would almost have for the world of, like, if TF was real, surely we'd all be able to, like, get into it somehow, you know? And I think that with science triggers in particular, it definitely feels a bit more tangible, particularly in terms of some of the scenarios that you can like frame around it from like a quote unquote realistic perspective.
That's kind of what.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's why, like, when it comes to the K-suit stuff, when I was thinking of it, I actually was thinking of the same kind of thing. I want it to be accessible. I'm not going to make this very special thing that only, like, a weird select few people can get. I think that's really stupid. Especially if that technology becomes known. Oh, my God. What the fuck are people supposed to do with that? But yeah, and that egalitarianism, I think is a really good way of looking at it. Or I mean, there's also the really selfish ones. You know, I was looking at some comic stuff earlier, so I remember Doctor Doom using his technology to pretty much make like super henchmen and like officers and stuff like that. And
what about
I mean,
that one X-Men villain? Is it X-Men that has the pterodactyl man who doesn't want to cure cancer? He just wants to turn people into dinosaurs.
Oh, Spider-Man. Yeah,
okay, it's a Spider-Man villain. All right.
I don't know if that is Spider-Man, and he crossed over with X-Men. I can't tell because Marvel meshes everything in now. Like
it is hard to extricate the two.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
But yeah, they have that, and also just yeah. Then there's also Mr. Sinister, who is a geneticist, and that on its own is exactly what you think it is a bunch of times and everything like that.
His never-ending love for Scott Summers.
Yes.
For whatever, I don't know why he likes Scott Summers, but he really does.
Scott Summers is so annoying. I fucking can't stand him. He's so fucking annoying.
Well, what do you find annoying about him?
What I find annoying is just whenever he opens his mouth, I feel like he needs to close it immediately. Okay, I know people love the 90s X-Men cartoon, and I loved it too, but every single time he would talk, I would say out loud, "Shut up, Scott. Just shut up."
Okay.
There's just something so disagreeable about him for me that I just wanted him to never talk. And I don't know. I remain in that, but whatever. That's here nor there. So okay, so you like the idea that people can access it and everything like that. What do you think is overused or underused, and which ones would you really want to see take off, like as the most popular one?
Like, the nano machine thing is such a fun, like, when you have this swarm of intelligent robot things that can do whatever, like, it's basically a good hand wave to just about anything, but also you can make plausible explanations of why this doesn't hurt or whatever, or, so it's a... Also, you can make mini memes. Hopefully you can't hear my dog, but maybe you can. He is coughing.
A little bit.
Poor
That's
guy.
fine. Nice cameo.
Yep. Kazu's making a showing, but anyway. But I mean, like, probably Nano Machines is the most cool one because it can have the contagion elements, but also it is versatile fundamentally. And like getting back to the idea of the egalitarianism, I do really so like there's lots of things that we can all hate about Harry Potter, but the thing I hate most is about how someone imagined a magical world and then it's like everybody's kept out of it. Like there being this partition between the things is one of the things that annoys me most about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's incredibly frustrating. And also, like, especially when it comes to, like, world building, when you have, like, kind of, like, the secretive magical societies or what have you, there's always the question of how do you continue to keep it secret? And, like, yes, there's lots of things you can kind of hand wave, but at a certain point, it starts to stretch the realm of believability.
But
if you
also
don't do it properly,
or requires awful violations of the rights of other human beings to have like a continued like exist. Because like, oh, we're just gonna wipe everybody's memory. It's like that's a horrible thing to do just at a base level on the best of days.
It's a choice. It's a choice to do when people engage at that. But yeah, I don't know. It often, I find it requires a lot of suspension of disbelief, and I think that is it just gets stretched so much to the point of like, what am I really like reading into here, and what is the real point of segmenting it off in this way?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of modern Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's frustrating because as I was looking at the Harry Potter stuff, I fucking as I was learning about it because I never read it, I didn't understand the fact that it was just something that was sectioned off for seemingly no reason. I mean, there is God. I keep forgetting. It's like which I'll tell you something. Damn it! I'm gonna like put it in the video, the actual title with a big asterisk in front for everybody to see. There's this manga that I started reading some time ago, and it had to do with the concept of being able to do magic as a hereditary thing, and there's something to that, and then they explain it, and then I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense. No wonder this would be the case. But I don't really want to get into it because if you want to read it, but it does have to do with the reason that such a thing is gatekept, and I think it's pretty neat.
So I do a lot of fantasy and modern setting world building, and it's just like I just don't like those kinds of divides on a personal level. So when I'm kind of designing or conceptualizing how a magic system works or something like that, I never really want to make it to where it's just in a bloodline, because I kind of would prefer someone's individual capabilities or dedication to a craft be the thing that determines it, rather than a bloodline. But that's kind of my prejudices and
no, I think that's fine.
Tastes.
I think that's completely fine. I'm just saying that there is only one story so far that I can think of that has given me a very convincing and obvious reason for why things are the way they are, and then seeing the situation develop from that, once you understand, is part of the is part of the hook of the story.
What comic was it, or manga?
Like I said, I'll have to let you know afterward, because I really don't remember.
I would be curious to know. All right.
Yeah, I'll definitely tell you, and the audience will be able to see it. And also, if you're listening to it on Spotify, I'll put it in the description so that people can actually just look at it that way, because you can't you can't see sound unless you're really,
Yeah.
really, really, really high. Are you high? Are you high listening to this right now? I want to know.
You never know. I mean, skunk TF. I did also want to like ask, like when it comes, like just bring it back to the science for a second. You know, we've talked a little bit about like the nanobots, for example. Are there any like scientific kind of concepts or tropes that you just really do not like to see within like transformation pieces? And if so, what are they?
So, like, my major hangups and things I won't draw, and I need to preface by saying I don't draw these things by also saying I try not to be judgmental of people that draw things or partake in things that are outside of my safe zones. So I'm really not trying to be on a high horse when I say I don't like non-consensual stuff or loss of self or certain gross out elements. If someone likes those things, I think there's a reasonable justifications for why they like those. But in the scope of sci-fi, I don't like things that just overwrite someone's being. Of course, that's there is some play that is probably fun on like, oh, you've got a virus and now you're horny all the time. Like that sort of stuff is fun, but like it kind of has a limit for me that maybe it doesn't have for other people.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, we've talked at length on this podcast about identity death and identity supposition or substitution, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, whatever state from liquid to gas.
Plasma.
And but I get why people aren't like into that, and I think that particularly when it gets integrated into scientific situations, there is definitely a bit more. I want to say like realness isn't quite the right word, but it does feel a bit more realistic, I guess. And I think that can be a bit more jarring when compared to like, oh, like I've cast a spell on you kind of thing. Because like with magic in particular, there's always a bit of kind of teasing that, it could be reversed, like a spell or a curse or what have you. Science, it's not that that isn't true as well, but I feel like it's implicitly a bit less likely, particularly when you start getting down to like, oh, your DNA has been changed or something, because it's like, how do you get back exactly to your DNA from a scientific perspective? Like that shit's wild. So I feel like that's a pretty reasonable boundary to have.
Yeah, I mean, like it is interesting to think about, like, why does that feel more visceral than a magic trigger for something like that? And I guess it's just the suspension of disbelief is probably better, and maybe it's a self-selecting thing. Maybe if somebody was more inclined to believe in magic than science, that they would have feel more earnest in their connection with that also. But, there are people that legitimately believe the singularity is coming for us, and that there will be man-machine interfaces that are seamless in our lifetime, which I don't personally believe, but there are people that think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
I think the reason that hits closer is because science has grown exponentially, and when you look at our history and how different our world looks and what our lives are like from 100 years ago, oh yeah, a century, a very long time, but there are people who can live just about that long, and those people get to go from just radio to Bluetooth video devices that you can call somebody on the other side of the world with for real, and not even like shitty quality or skipping frames and shit like that. All that stuff is completely fucking possible now. That's insane. People really need to understand that from like my perspective of the 90s and being like, yeah, this is about as good as it's going to get, and now it's like I don't even understand. Now they have to break through limits that we have set for ourselves because we thought, oh, this is going to be whatever. If you want an easy example, you can have more than 16 gigs of RAM in your PC, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't even made to utilize it. So it's superfluous to have more. And like, the reason science can hit harder is because you could look at that and think, what if we find something? What if our understanding of something just completely breaks and then everything else opens up and creates more questions? And And that is something that we know we live with. So if you base it in science, it could be like, ooh, maybe.
Mm. What if it's like, what if tomorrow there is a breakthrough in like gene sequencing and splicing and editing to living beings that was hitherto unforetold, and just like suddenly it's like, oh, tails are a thing that we can give humans that are alive currently right now. I mean, it's not it seems wild, but it also seems plausible on some level. There are methods they're trying to manipulate people's DNA while they're still alive, but it's an ongoing thing. So yeah, I mean, that does, and it is as an elder millennial, I do know that the world I grew up in is gone and is totally replaced by what we're in now, and it's kind of wild.
Yep.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. I feel like we like ramble about that a lot on this podcast about how much
Back in my day,
everything has changed. But we love transformation, right? Mm. So I guess you have to embrace it to some degree because there's no going back.
Yeah,
right.
It's all permanent.
Well, I mean,
it's all permanent.
That's not a healthy So the thing about transformation that I think is kind of cool is that thematically you can work it into actually more practical stuff like that. Like, oh, the world has changed, and your feelings about a changing world can be mirrored in a work that you're making. So, like, when you feel out of context in a society that has changed significantly, like, that can be a metaphor for something somebody's experienced for because they're turned into a wolfman. Like, it works, trust me. No.
Want to be a wolfman, huh?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did want to turn the questions a little around because we've talked a lot about science, and I know we've touched a little bit on magic, but I'm curious as to what kind of scenarios you generally like to focus on from the magical perspective. And again, keeping in mind, of course, like all the themes in Overstay. I'm sure that'll come into it a little bit, but curious just to hear your thoughts on what you tend to veer towards from that perspective.
So with my comic Overstay, it is very traditional, like werewolf bite, and the claws don't do it, and sexual contact doesn't do it, as you definitely would find out in the first chapter. No,
yes,
because like otherwise that would be happening at least a chapter sooner. Anyway, but so, like, it doesn't really play too much. It's just that one thing, and in the setting that exists in, there might be additional other things that are similar, like magical beings, like vampires or whatever, that exist, but I haven't exactly enumerated or even pinned down for fully how those things work. So, but, like, as far as magic stuff that I think is really cool, I do like a good cursed item. Like, it's hard to beat that. So I don't like non-consensual content, but I will do accidental content, which I feel there's not some malicious person overlooking it. You just had this happen as a quirk of fate, and it's up to a character to make good or ill of it. And that's an interesting storytelling thing to me. And one of the concepts that I have tooling around that I should start soon is a comic called Regalia, which is basically a cursed item, but there's more to it like that. It is kind of a method by which a human can form a pact with an animal deity to take on some of the parts of that being, but like it comes at certain costs, and it could be viewed as a cursed item, and that it's all about a slow sequence involving that. But I do like that stuff a lot.
Fuck yeah. I mean, that sounds fucking great. I do love a curse item, so I do very much get behind that. And when it comes to like those sorts of magical systems, I mean, we're just to pick on the artifacts for a second. Do you generally like there to be like specific rules in place, or like, it's not just, it's cursed, it's like it's cursed because you did X, Y, Z, or do you prefer to leave it more like up to the viewer's kind of interpretation in terms of how something might work?
So I think there is a lot to magic systems that allow magic to be unknowable on some level, but it is also on the other hand interesting to have it coherent and have rules, so it's not just like, okay, I just magicked my way out of this situation because I had just the spell for the situation, unless you set it up earlier that this person was planning for this thing and took a lot of effort to make this work, and this was part of a master plan. Then having just the spell for the situation is not a good solve. Like, there's a book called book series called The Black Company, and it's like glow fantasy, except the wizards and stuff in that are like on a whole nother level and are insanely powerful, and like you can decapitate them and they still live. And every time magic shows up, it's just like, oh crap, magic. And there is a lot to be said for that. Like, just these wizard lords that are just like unknowable, awful beings. But on the other hand, you could go the Sanderson route and be like, here is every nuance of magic and existence explained in minute detail. And it's like, I guess you could go either way. And it is interesting to do either way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much fun that can be played into those situations. And I think every artist has their own kind of approach when it comes to how they want to delve into it and how much they want to communicate. So I fucking dig that.
Yeah, it's really, I do like it when magic has some kind of course that you got to follow, because yes, it does suck when you can just do anything. Problem with the Harry Potter series: why don't you just do this? You're all gods, and you still have problems. This is actually kind of pathetic.
Or the thing that gets me with Harry Potter, it's like, we can heal broken bones. Why are there not, like, if you still need to keep your secret magical society, just plant wizards in hospitals helping people. Like, the whole, like, the burden of just what they could do to help the non-magic community is just insane, and that it just bothers me on a deep level sometimes if you think about it.
Yeah, it's really small-minded shit. Which, if written by a good author, one could explore that kind of universe as a problem and try to pick it apart.
And then you could have the stress with the society where someone is actually like stressed against this unjust system, rather than it just being kind of part of how that works. It's like,
yeah. So like it's there's plenty to explore with that. I mean, like, that being said, also, do you prefer, like, you said, well, actually, maybe you answered the question already, because you said you like cursed items a lot, so I guess you'd be like a catalyst, right, rather than like abstract willpower type when it comes to like means of transforming people?
Like, for magic, it's just kind of like, it could be, I don't think it's like somebody like on a quest to become a thing. Usually, I like it's incidental, or it's just it's like, if werewolves exist in a setting, some number of people are going to be bit by accident and have to deal with that as a story, right. And that's their story arc, I guess. So, like, that's fun, but I don't, as far as willpower, I definitely am on the side of preferring people keep their individuality. As for how you justify how there's any bad curses in that, well, I mean, I guess those aren't the stories I'm going to tell, but there have to be probably bad things that can happen to people that are way on the other end of things, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So what about you? Do you like catalysts and stuff like that? Do you prefer like the cursed items? Do you like little objects, little thingies to put together, or do you just like to be like, I will shape you to my desires type thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when it comes to magic, well, I'll use this as a kind of an example. So I have an OC separate from like my Sonas, who's basically my fursuit, whose name is Equinox. And in my kind of like conceptualization of when I was like coming up with him and like his character and such, one of the things that I wanted was to have him be able to change other people. And the way that I kind of played it off was I wanted it to be basically like giving people what they wanted, but like having a little bit of a twist on it. And I think, at least in terms of like how I kind of came up with that concept, one of the things I really liked was playing around with not necessarily having too many hard boundaries, and instead being it more of like this is a magic that people might inherently have or can cast or what have you. So I guess more of like a casting to like change someone else. I do really like catalysts, and I'd say ironically that's something that comes up a lot more in my artwork than like my like conceptualization of characters. I find that when it comes to characters, I build a lot more systems around them versus like individual one-off art pieces. I'll have like catalysts, cursed items, triggers, like shit like that basically. But I think if I had to pick, I probably do like the willpower energy angle a bit more, just because it allows for a bit more fluidity when it comes to building scenarios around characters.
Okay, yeah, I like that too. I just think it's hotter when somebody just wants it, so that's why I would go with that.
Well, that's fair.
It is.
In TF and in many other contexts.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I turned off my background so you could see him. I mean, he looks like a very good boy, but he also has a bad streak. And, I kind of like that too, So it's like, I'm also someone who very much is into like consensual TF, or as you kind of put it, like when you have like an accident or something related to that. But sometimes to like make it a bit spicy, it's like, okay, let's stretch the boundaries on that just a little, and maybe like the timing isn't necessarily what the person thought it was going to be, or like the way in which it goes down, but it's still something they wanted, kind of thing. Just maybe they weren't 100% ready for it, and I've decided they are ready for it, kind of thing. So I don't know, I like playing around with that a little bit, but broadly speaking, I think it comes down to like the willpower stuff.
Yeah,
I do totally get that, and like I do think it's a fun area to play in, but it's hard. I feel like it's harder for me to. If I did like 3 stories where that happened, it'd be like, well, that's just this guy's thing. It's like, which is fair too. I guess I just kind of am very simple about it, and I feel like there's enough space for me to work in that I'm still enjoying it. But there is a lot going on there with like egging someone on past the precipice to something that they want on some level that they're like reluctant about. Like that element, that tension between what someone wants and what they're afraid to actually take for themselves is very dramatic and a really good story part. But it is. There's just like, I feel like when writing that, you need to be more careful about it to not. The barriers that I impose on myself, it's hard to do that and not kind of step over a line, I think, morally that I.
Yeah.
But in prefacing this again, I'm not judgmental on people that like to push their play and their fantasies in directions that I'm not going to draw a comic about, because that's totally fine. Like it's your personal expression.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about comfort. And I think especially, and as we've said many times on this podcast, like art is primarily for the artist. And so I think that, making sure that you have those clear boundaries that you're able to stay within and resist kind of being pushed in directions you don't want to be, I think that's a really important skill to have. And it's a sign of someone who has like a good sense of character too.
Or maybe I'll just fall to corruption slowly. Ooh,
I mean, people love that shit too. But I'm curious though, Libra, where do you fall on the catalyst versus willpower energy type thing when it comes to magic?
I just like catalysts are fun because they're a good limiter. And I like it when people have to ration or make decisions on that in a pinch. But willpower is fun because I think you get really personal with it. And then if you want to have character building moments, then you can play with that. And I don't know, I think I still lean on the willpower because I lean heavy into the wants. And that's what a lot of my favorite characters display. They display immense willpower. The sheer grit to do it is what gets them through. Sometimes at great cost. So it's not always a freebie. They have to probably still live with something or survive something so that they can get back into just a basic shape to do things again, or they're fucking dead. So yeah, I think I lean on the willpower thing more than anything.
Cool. Well, I wanted to make sure we had time to also get into Overstay, of course, because I know that's kind of been your main focus in terms of the body of work, and I've had a chance to kind of read through it. And so I guess I wanted to like start off at the ground level and get a better sense of like, you've been running this pretty popular long running comic, and I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear a bit more as to how you specifically picked the concept itself and how you kind of decided to focus on like Alex and Sarah as kind of the main characters.
So I laugh at like, how'd you pick this concept? Because my thought process was this. I was like, okay, what is the most self-indulgent subject matter, characters, and just like general intro to them that I could do? Like, what is just like, oh, he's with this hot like in the past years it would have been like a scene girl or something, and she's into the stuff that he's into, and wait, she's a werewolf and they're gonna fuck. And that was basically the base level of this. I was just like, what will just get me interested and to keep doing that? And so I just did the first chapter, and I was just like, okay, this is the most self-indulgent thing. I have just set out to do this. This is just like my wheelhouse. And then like, oh crap, people actually like this, and that it kind of just snowballed from there, oddly enough. Like, because it was definitely just willfully, like, it's like, this is the artist thing.
Yeah.
Like, like,
yeah. It's really interesting because in the first chapter, obviously, it's very much focused on like, oh no, this is my, my hot boo who can become a werewolf and have fun. And the second chapter, I guess spoilers, focuses more around kind of like spreading that change back over to Alex. And so I was curious, I guess, two questions. The first one being what kind of led you to kind of go down that path? And second of all, if you felt like there was like a particular kind of connection in terms of like realizing something you might want to happen to yourself in terms of what happens with Alex.
I mean, Alex is to a degree a self-insert, not entirely, because he's quite different than me. There is actually a actual self-insert at the end of chapter 1 that is just me as a human hanging out at the end, asking about
complaining about the dog.
Yeah, that is so. But Alex definitely is like me doing a kind of guy that I could like to draw a lot and see a lot of myself in, but is pretty different in some other ways. And as far as... So there were a number of considerations. First, I was like, well, it looks like I'm going to keep doing this. So I want to make things as interesting as I can. And by that I mean it's just not the same sex scene between two characters. So with giving Alex a werewolf form, he has greater modality to create more different scenes. And there's also potential for more conflict as he gets used to it. Although, I will say, the story is very simple. This is not like me telling some great yarn. There's basically two characters that matter, and if family members or random people show up occasionally otherwise. But basically, I think the single biggest thing is just him having that form opens up for more types of scenes between the two of them.
Like when he undergoes his transformation at work, of course.
Yes, and that's, of course, playing into like, oh no, I'm doing this someplace where I won't want to get found out. That'd be so, I'm kind of just doing a greatest hits of transformation trope kind of things with that I would find engaging to draw. So, like, definitely him breaking that mop and showing it what for is just an articulation on that, like, oh, you've got to keep this thing secret kind of element that I find interesting. I'm sure a lot of other people find interesting as well.
Oh, yeah, totally. Exactly. I think it's really likable so far, even with like the simple stuff. I think that's another thing that I also keep saying is I like it when creators are sincere about what they're doing. If I feel like they're playing to it because people like it or something like that, then or just like pushing the fact that this is the thing that it is, and you like this, don't you? I like it, and you like it, and you just keep pushing that and pushing that. We were just kind of watching it happen. I'm like, okay, there's a werewolf chick, and like, okay, now she's your girlfriend, and she likes you. Okay, now we're gonna do the thing, and now you're both gonna be werewolves, and now sex is gonna get whatever it is. And I do like that you go with the whole how to put it? It's like horizontal progression instead of vertical, which was, I think, a really good way of explaining why shonen anime has the problems that it does, because they keep raising the stakes and everything just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just gets dumber and you lose sight. But if you play with the rules and the setting that you have and you get creative with it, then you can keep things very interesting. So I do like that you were able to take the situation of like, okay, what if human and werewolf? Now he'll be dealing with what it means to be a werewolf. What can he do? What can he do now that he is that way, and so on. It's I think it's a very solid way of laying out your story and keeping it so that things matter and there are still risks.
Yeah, and like I would say that Overstay is a pretty low stakes comic. Like, I mean, there is some nebulous risk in chapter 3, but
I don't mean to imply that there's a ton of drama. There isn't, and I think that's fine too. I don't always need drama with the story. I am whenever I read it, I just think, oh, what's going to happen next? Which is, I think, the most important part of any story.
Thank you.
Is keeping somebody like, oh, what now? How's this going to go? What's so. You have that going, but the reason I even bring up drama is because a lot of this stuff is dramatic to a lot of people. And come on, they like the drama. It's permanent. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know if it's going to happen to me. Oh, they're going to chase me down and they're going to hold me down and they're going to turn me into this thing. There's nothing I can do about it. The science facility people are going to track me down, lock me up, and use me as their guinea pig. There's tons of drama in it.
Yeah, I mean, like there is drama, but it is kind of just like a low stake. Like, it's a personal stakes. It's the stakes are the relationship between these two people. Alex coming to terms with what he has opted into, and I think in some ways, sometimes I have shown that Sarah was not as completely forthright as she could have been in some places. Like, just like but also not in a malicious way, but like. There's some nuance to what's going on between them, I guess. I don't want to oversimplify it, but
don't worry. I don't. If you feel like I'm misrepresenting your story, then I don't mean to do that. Okay, all right.
No, it is. So basically, there's 5 chapters, and that's what the book will collect. And so, I kind of took their relationship to, I feel, what is a logical conclusion for them, and. So it's kind of like this is it for them as main characters for the foreseeable future too. So, but it's maybe not the end of that for the setting, for them as side characters in somebody else's story. So there's a lot that I could still end up doing with them or with this setting for sure.
No, 100%. I found it interesting that in you kind of took chapter 4 to like build in a little bit of that kind of world building and like explaining some of the minutiae of what's kind of going on, and one of the things in particular is you kind of come down on that side of like this is kind of like tropey magical stuff, not so much like hard science or anything, and I wouldn't say like the source is ever really truly explained. Was that ever something you considered getting into, or was it just because it wasn't really relevant, especially from like a stakes perspective, it just wasn't something you were going to get into?
The characters don't know what the origin of lycanthropy is, and Sarah has a rough idea of what magic is in the setting, but not like to where she's a practitioner of it. And in fact, werewolves are really bad at it in this setting because they're so thoroughly enmeshed with it that they really can't do much with it, actually. So, like, those are things that I will elaborate on in the future. But I know I have an origin for what werewolves are, like, broadly, like, why they would exist in the setting. And so they're just not in a position to know that stuff. So, like, rather than have, like, the prologue where it's like, in this world in the beginning there were these forces and they did a thing and everybody was angry, and now so it's just like these are people living in a pretty direct analog to Earth. In fact, I imagine it being like in some kind of Appalachian city, on the edge of Appalachia kind of thing, and that's kind of So yeah, there's more going on with the world building, but I don't really want to spell it out in the context of the comic.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I imagine, like, especially since it's gone on for quite a number of many pages, when it comes to like actually planning out the story and like looking at like the character arcs and all of that good stuff, did you have like a super informed idea in mind when you started, or was it more as the story progressed, so too did your conception of where it was going to head?
Well, I kind of did it a chapter at a time, and that first one I kind of, like, it was just like, what am I into? What am I going to do with these characters? So that was the first chapter. But then it's just like, well, what's the logical way for their relationship to go from there? And that was kind of just beat for beat what was happening. It's just following the arc that I imagined these two characters would go through together over the span of the comic. So I think some of the writing I like the most is not plot driven but character driven, where characters just do what they're gonna do in that circumstance, and the writer, where to the extent they can, does not intervene and make like, oh, and then she goes and sets the house on fire for some reason, like, because that would be a contrivance. But if the character has some reason to do an action, I always think that's better that they do the action that would follow from what they're in the situation.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree on that front. I think that making it so that it feels like a natural evolution of each of their respective kind of wants and desires, and, compositing all the things that they learn along the way too. I mean, I think that's a pretty normal way to build the narrative, and, like Libra said before, in terms of that like horizontal kind of escalation, I think that it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Well, thanks.
And also, it's go ahead. Please continue.
It's really exciting to just have been able to tell a whole story and like have it, like, for decades I'd made stuff and then I quit, and I was like, I had this like feeling that I'd never make a complete thing and like never get it out and never like generate a book. And it's kind of funny that through this niche porn comic I have accomplished a lot of things that were kind of on my bucket list. Which is
nice.
It's kind of an interesting place to be, just where like I feel like creatively I could do a lot more, and I want to do a lot more, and I want future stories to have complexities that this didn't have, but like also it's just, I'm really grateful to be where I am, and that the people that have followed along have enabled me to create this much of something that I enjoy making.
Yeah,
that's great to know, man. And by the way, porn in terms of like comics and everything is a historical start to some other people's careers. They sometimes just start off by making some horny stuff, and and there you go. I think, like, I'm pretty sure the guy who created Tenchi Muyo, before he got to actually get an OVA for the actual story, made another fucking animation, and it was
Starship
like
Protrugra. Yeah.
I don't know if it was that one. Was it that one? No.
It's the same artist. Maybe that was after Tenchi, but he did just do like a fairly softcore pornography after that.
No, I think it was Masquerade.
Okay.
It might have been. It's either Masquerade or Spaceship Agaruder, but that's what I'm aware of. That before Tenchi there was porn.
And the Helsing artist was a doujin artist before the Helsing manga came into being. So, like, yeah, there is a precedent. And then you get stuff like, I think it's Tezuka, they found mouse transformation porn in his drawer. After
you haven't seen the book? You haven't seen the book with all the stuff?
Is there a book of that? No. I just seen a couple images of it, and I was like, well, if I'm in this company, I'm doing all right.
I have the whole thing, and he did a lot of transformations. It wasn't just the mouse, it was like objects, it was animals, it was like anthro characters. He definitely had a thing for transformation, and that wasn't just a one-off. And
it's just kind of interesting. Well, it's somewhat comforting too that there are people that are that conventionally successful that also have our interests as well.
I must assert, we are everywhere. We are everywhere, okay?
We're in the walls.
And even if you don't think we're everywhere, we could pop up anywhere. Anybody could have a little spark, a little awakening, and suddenly be just like us. I've seen it happen. I've made it happen.
It's like, is this a cautionary tale or a no? Just
Yeah. I mean, listen, I wear my tails out and about in public all the time. I am 100% certain I have made someone realize either that they were a furry or that is something they could do. So I feel pretty satisfied in that.
The transformation stuff is interesting because, like, even in the context of furry cons, I have had people who have seen that my wares were transformation related go, ew, in recoil. So, like,
really?
There even at a furry con, I received that reaction.
Trust me,
most people do it.
Yeah. No, the furries are the last fucking people that should be doing that.
Every
time
crazy.
I've heard that, it's like, really, dude. All right,
Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, go move along, please. You know, like, ugh, sorry, you were gonna say something, Libra.
I just discussed this in the previous episode.
Yeah.
That you know, the furry and the TF groups and everything. It's like every single group is the same kind of group. Everybody thinks they're special and that they're better. And in this case, there's like the open-mindedness and the acceptance, and progressive is like, no, you are all judgmental little fucking pricks. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. And like, I live and let live. No, you fucking don't. You avoid and let live. That's not what you desperately put that shit out of your way. You don't care. You don't look into it. You're not that curious. You're not even morbidly curious. It's like, get the fuck out of here.
Most people are incurious, I would say. Like, you could describe most people as content to be in their lane. And it does take something outside the norm to partake in something outside of what you feel most comfortable in. And sometimes it's a great experience, sometimes it opens doors, and other times it doesn't. And I think that people are just afraid of that risk. And that's part of the aversion I feel that people have. But also maybe just social stigma is maybe a more simple explanation too, where people don't want to be seen as part of a group that they don't like, just like a knee-jerk revulsion, scared kind of thing of being a part of a group.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's the same thing.
It's
like
it's
TF community. Like, we're the TF
Yeah.
community. Yes, good for you. You're a different flavor of banner. And yeah, I get it. Like, a lot of people are generally incurious. The exception for something like this is there is easy access to awareness of other things, and not only do they resist it, they sometimes just like they deride it. And that's where I get upset, because they will also often speak of being made fun of and not like, oh, you know, people don't accept us and this kind of messed up. But like, no, people are doing the same fucking thing. And no, maybe you'd like it, or maybe you'd probably get your head out of your ass and stop looking at other people like they don't know what the fuck is going on. You got to learn where to take your shots. Like, if I'm going to come out of my face about something, I'm going to be standing my ground on it, but I'm also going to be willing to change my mind if that's what you do. You got to be sincere about it.
One thing I wanted to touch on that I thought was interesting, well, it's two parts, but I'll start with this one first. So one of the things I noticed is that on kind of like when you were summarizing it as part of like the Kickstarter page, you said that you often see comments calling the comic wholesome. Which honestly, I would agree with that statement, but I also can see why that might seem a bit jarring given there is so much sex involved. So I was curious on like how you feel about that descriptor.
So like, it kind of links back to what we were talking about a moment ago, even, where people recoil from things they don't like. But I think that Overstay can almost be like a gateway to transformation stuff, in that it presents it in a very positive light with characters that love each other and enjoy each other's company, and just like, it's like the wholesomeness, I think, is just from that the characters are genuine and that they like each other, and that that the feelings that it elicits are not kind of like icky. I feel like is where people are coming from with that. And it is interesting that that's where it's at, but if you look at the volume of pornographic material that's produced, I'd say only a minority of it is of characters that like each other having fun.
Yes.
At the base, like, so like if you're even doing that, you're doing something that's more wholesome than pretty much anything that's on the market, is you would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's an accurate way of putting it. Sorry, go ahead, Libra.
No, I'm just glad that you were aware of that. 'Cause I think so many people don't fucking get it. There's another thing. Like, I know you said that there's that you won't come out at people, but when I see like really rapey shit where I think there's just the suffering is the attraction, it bothers me.
Yeah,
But when they gets brought up by somebody who doesn't like it, not even just accusatory, just being like, man, that seems like a pretty fucked up scenario, they get really defensive. Like, I don't know why somebody would say that, and
Yeah,
like Jesus Christ, man. At least
there's
be
a
willing to meet
cognitive
people.
dissonance going on. There's a cognitive dissonance going on, I think, for folks when, you call it out as like it is, and then it's like, oh, but why would you say that? And it's like, well, I'm just accurately describing what you're presenting.
Yeah.
If that's not what you like,
Yeah.
then I don't know what to tell you, like...
I think there's some nuance to that, because there
Yeah.
are people that are working through trauma in various ways, and
Of course.
and it's their right to process it however they feel is right, and if that so like that's one of the major reasons why I don't get on a high horse about it where I can, but instead I'm just over here doing my thing that I think has merit and will appeal to people that stuff turns away.
Yeah.
don't think-
I think that does make sense.
It's not always a high horse matter. It's like, this is how it's making me feel, and now that you're experiencing the feeling that I'm getting, you're not liking it. That's the thing about sharing your artwork and your expression. You want reactions. You're going to get reactions. If I came on this show and every single episode I had to make a point that I don't like these things, then that's very different from me every now and again saying, like, I noticed this thing in the community. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that people just seem to kind of be like they don't get it. And all I just want is some self-awareness. But yes, self-awareness. I'm glad you are aware that it is wholesome, because there is also the general stigma around sex in general. And I brought this up, I think, in the Patreon server like some time ago, where people don't realize that sex can be and is a bonding experience between people that's meaningful. So like when people for instance say like, oh, there shouldn't be sex scenes in media anymore, or things like that, there absolutely can be, and there's a place for them. And my favorite like comic that still isn't done yet for that is Alfie. Every single sex scene, well, almost every single sex scene is a character building moment. You get an internal monologue. They're trying something new. Every time they're doing something, it's kind of like in a new place, even if it's with the same people or a new state of mind. I think that's great, and that shows that's what it is. But because
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I'll show that to you afterward too. But
Cool.
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people need to realize, especially if you're uncomfortable with kink or porn or whatever, and you're probably thinking the same way, like, why do those people like that? Oh my God! Well, there's a reason a lot of people like sex, and there's a reason that it has a place in storytelling too. And in this case, Overstay is, character-driven experience. When you're busy fucking somebody, there's pillow talk after, unless it's purely a want thing, and that's a different story.
Yep. Man, but like that kind of, so like, man, I kind of lost my trail there, but but it's, I think that where sexual intercourse is such a fundamental part of being human, that there is a stigma about the depiction of it at all is kind of silly on a certain level, but I'm sure that's nothing new to be expressing. But it's just one of those things that's just like, and also the other thing that you can jump to is like, well, violence is all over the place. Why is that okay? It's just like, I don't know, maybe there can be a move to rehabilitate that sort of content by not making it so violent and unpleasant.
There's
parties.
Something like that people are trying to do. If you listen on the wind or see what people are trying to do and how they fight against, or like people trying to legitimize sex work and things like that, that stuff alone is efforts to destigmatize it in a number of ways. And without getting like super analytical, sociopolitical, historical, all that kind of shit, anthropological even, yeah, it's something that people are trying to do, but there's such heavy pushback. And the worst thing is that there's a ton of pushback on the ground level. So that makes it even harder, because you got the people with all the power, and then you got the people with very little power, but there's so many of them. It's like, how the fuck do you break through this? And it's tough.
Yeah.
And it breaks, like, there are a lot of normal people that are incurious, that are not going to push their boundaries in their lifetime. So I don't know that there can be a major societal shift to where that sort of content becomes more acceptable, except for people that are just kind of into esoteric ideas or more willing to push boundaries. And, you know, in the immediate future, I don't see that necessarily changing, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll all have to see anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that have changed in the time.
There's one more question I kind of wanted to ask, and it's funny because this was actually, I'd been saving this one. It was an audience question from Max Velocity that is incredibly relevant to ask you specifically. And so the question is, like, when it comes to like your comic, is there anything that you wish you had done differently with it?
I feel like I could have made certain. I feel like it could have had more more involved plotting, could have been worked in there. There could have been some more conflict. But I don't know, then it slots into a different genre. It becomes like adventure or something if there's more at stakes. But I do think about that, and in future projects there will be more complexity, more characters, probably multiple different partnerings, like instead of it just being a monogamous relationship between two characters. So those are things that I am thinking about and gonna try to address going forward too. Make things more complicated, but also more inclusive, and have more, but in the same tone.
Gotcha.
Okay.
No, I think that makes sense. And I think it's good that you've kind of like had the time to like do that reflection too, so that because I know obviously you have more ideas and projects you want to do, so having like those sorts of lessons learned, and maybe you would have done X or Y Z differently, those are then things you can apply to the next one. So I think it's great that you've kind of done that thinking on that front.
Yeah, it's always a learning process when you're making something over the span of time. And like, I actually went back and redrew some panels because they were just bothering me. Like, it wasn't even necessarily needed, but I was just like, I have come a long way in 4 years somehow. Like, it's kind of one of those things they don't tell you about art as a craft, and it's there's always this cult of like, oh, somebody XYZ person is talented, or this person was born to this, and that narrative is one of those like self-defeating things about people not taking up a pencil and becoming artists themselves. Art is a long-term like pursuit that you do over your whole lifetime, and I am very fortunate to have rediscovered it when I did, and have the opportunity to do these things that will improve what I'm making over time, and to continue this pursuit.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great message to take away, and I agree. Like, we all have the ability to create art, and this is why also, like, I think and I think this is something you've said in the past, Libra, actually, you know, like, there are folks who are like, oh, I only write because I can't draw, and it's like, well, if you really want to be drawing, you should be trying that. Not to say you can't do both, but like, your reason for not arting shouldn't be I can't draw, because
it's a cop out
there. Yeah, it's a cop out. It's a cop out.
Yeah, nobody starts that way. I like that people can. I know that I it's weird. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. It's weird that I have fans of any amount, but I
mean, I've been following your art for several years on Transfer and other places. So
thank you. That's really fucking cool. It's really cool. It's cool when the popular people like my things. But what I was trying to get at was, I just did this. I did this because, one, I love this stuff. Two, I wanted to do it my own way and maybe express things that other people aren't going to do. And 3, I didn't want to pay for it because I know really good art costs a lot of money. I don't have that shit, man. Yeah. You know, it's really simple desires, and if you want to do it, then fucking do it. And like, oh, what about this? What about that boundary? Yeah, everybody has boundaries. Please stop giving me the caveats or whatever. Just give it a shot here and there. And yeah, I don't like that reasoning at all, because then when there are people who love writing, it shows, and I like their work. I really like the work of people who really enjoy writing. For the most part, I feel like I'll have a better experience if people have that drive to write it in the first place rather than a substitute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, if someone is interested in both of these things, I have just the thing for them. It's called making a comics alone. And like,
there you go.
It is a medium that is like fully formed on the page. It has an immediacy in its accessibility that a novel would never have. And you can dedicate tremendous amounts of times to making it, hopefully fruitfully. It's like, God.
That'd be great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Also, I remembered the other question I was going to ask from before, and I did want to ask it because it's a bit of a gag question, but I've noticed in a lot of the comment sections on Fur Affinity, there is a constant refrain of, oh my god, they must spend a fortune on clothes every year. And I wanted to ask how you feel about that.
Well, it makes me feel all sorts of ways when they tear out of the clip. No. So, like, logically, they're probably not having that happen all the times that I draw it. So that I would assume that. I would assume that very infrequently does Sarah, or as Alex becomes more comfortable, will they ever have that happen. But that said, say they were in an emergency situation, it's like, well, fuck these clothes. It would be kind of what would happen. But yeah, that's one of those things. It's just like, yeah, I like it when the clothes rip. It's like,
I mean, I'm right there with you. I thought it was funny that like how many times it comes up in the comment section. It's like, congratulations, you're not the first person to make this observation. It has been made at least 10 times in the preceding 20 pages. You know,
that is just comment sections in a nutshell. Everybody's like, can I be the quippiest guy in this thing? And it's like,
I fucking hate that trend so goddamn much. God damn it, it makes everything so fucking worthless.
Oh god!
I will say though, go ahead. No, please.
I really do appreciate when people comment on my stuff, but a lot of people try hard to be like cool in comments and just like be earnest. And in general, that's one of the things I try to be. It's like, don't worry about being cool. Worry about being genuine as you can be. Is kind of where I've come in my elderly nature.
Yeah.
It just gets tiresome. I wish it was more of an occasional thing. Oh, the thing I also wanted to bring up was because of the quip about clothing costs and everything. I don't think I mentioned it to you, Zil. But Phrannd, have you ever heard of Bastard? The manga.
It's only something I've seen very little of, like, years ago, but I'm familiar with the title.
Okay, Bastard's main character is a ultra-powerful wizard who, in so many cases, ends up stripping or losing his clothes. All right? So he ends up naked a lot, but when there's some downtime or whatever, and he's got to go somewhere, there will be a panel where he just, like, is whooshing around like a big new cloak to just put on, and that gets acknowledged by the characters as like, what? But they never explain it.
Where did he get that cloak?
Well, first of all, he's like an ultimate wizard, so you can just be like magic, but it still confuses people, and I love it. And I love that there's no explanation, and it's like fuck it, like they must spend a lot on clothes. Do they? Keep them guessing.
I mean, for one, if like let's assume Sarah or Alex were into tearing clothes, you can just save like $20 and buy like the cheapest used jeans and shirt that you have, and then just tear those. Like, is the $20 worth having your fun? Probably to most people. I'm sure they pay. Certain people spend more money on other things that they're into.
I think condoms. I think condoms cost more.
Pretty quickly. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Oh man. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, there are ways to keep those costs down. So awesome. Well, we did have some audience questions that I wanted to make sure we also had time to get to. And so the first question that I have here is from Max Velocity again, actually. And the question is, which of these do you think would be most difficult for you to come to terms with giving up for a TF? Your fine motor skills, your personality, or your ability to interact with people?
Man,
I don't know if anyone wants to go first.
you people are sadistic. All of those things would hurt a lot.
Which of these fundamental traits of being a person would you hate to lose? It's like, oh, all of them.
Fuck you, man.
But you got to pick one. You got to pick one.
I guess the motor
hate the
skills. That I'd hate the most. Then I guess
Yes.
I guess my fucking personhood. What an
Yeah,
asshole!
it's-
That's so fucked up. What a
Yeah.
Sophie's choice. No, I'm not gonna get over it. That's it. Mood for this is entirely fucked now for me.
How about, Phrannd, would you say that? Phrannd, sorry. Would you say it's the same for you?
As a strange hermit, not interacting with other people would be probably by and large just fine. So keeping my motor skills and sense of self would definitely be priority in this shit triangle.
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny because when I think about like giving up your fine motor controls, I'm like, joke's on you. I don't have fine motor skills anyways, so I'm not giving up much of anything there. Although I know that's kind of unjust. I get what they're going for.
Yeah.
But I think it would, for me, it would be the ability to interact with other people because I'm a really extroverted, social type of person.
Look at
And
this
so I think
gregarious
that would-
person.
Yeah, I would be sad about that. Identity substitution, whatever, fine, but I can't like interact with people anymore. Fuck, man, that sucks. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want that. So
So like, I actually have a hereditary tremor, so my hands are shaking currently, as dexterous as I may be.
Hey.
So paws are not going to make that any better, I guess, one assumes.
Yeah, I have dysgraphia, so I feel you there. It's like I don't know. I'm not missing much really, so whatever. But yeah, the next question we have is from Leaf Wine, and it's a Halloween specific one. So if you could direct a TF themed horror comedy, what would those movies be like plot wise, and would you have any current or past guests on to have a cameo appearance? It's a very broad question, so
yeah. Does anybody else have even like a remote
I
idea?
can go first. Yeah. So if I had to pick like a horror comedy, I would probably want to do something kind of on the axis of Cabin in the Woods, where like you're doing a lot of like you build up tropes and to subvert them later on in the movie. In particular, I think like any sort of like dangerous game style scenario is always really good for that kind of a swap. So for example, in the 2 Change game that our friends Duck and Ewan made, you can have a scenario where all of the people involved are slowly turning into animals as they're being hunted. And I think that kind of like situation would actually work really well from like a comedy subversion perspective. If, you know, you're able to like gain certain abilities and work to try and undo the TF while also getting into shenanigans. So I would probably pick something along those lines. And I think in terms of cameos, I feel like I have to pick Duck and Ewan because they came up with that scenario in the first place. So I guess they'd get subbed in as cameos. I don't know as what, but they'll show up somehow.
So I actually have an idea that would be pretty easy to do, but it's
Oh, yeah.
basically just a college party, but there's a werewolf at the college party, but it's not malicious, just everybody keeps getting accidentally bitten. Through just whatever various contrivances. Like, you fell on the stairs and his jaw slammed shut on your wrist and oh no. Like, that is...
It's like Tom
It's
and
kinda
Jerry
like
level
a-
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a Tucker and Dale versus Evil is the name of a movie.
Oh yeah,
that is
Yes.
kind of in that genre where there's not even really a killer except for certain things very late, where it's just like incidental things that are happening that are horrific.
Amazing. I love it. Oh man. How about you, Libra?
Horror comedy with transformation. How do I do that? What if we were to do the body horror type thing, like The Substance or The Fly, and it could be horrendously ugly, but aside from that, there's no danger, and it's just like, please, I don't want to be this ugly, for the love of God, please. Nobody's going to accept me in society. Like they're not going to hurt anybody, but they're just desperately trying to avoid the visual consequence, and maybe end up being some kind of like hero. And if they become a hero, then also society will treat them kind of weird, but okay. It's just like, you're a good monster. You're a good monster. You just kind of get like really fucking annoyed by it.
Yeah.
Just a society full of brundleflies.
Yeah,
I love that actually. That would be really good.
it's like, oh my God, you're one of those. And it's like, I saw that movie. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Wow, you can talk. Yeah. With this mouth, it's weird, right?
Yeah, I don't know how that articulates, but maybe they just carry like food bags that they can regurgitate into that like obscure what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I dig it. We also had another Halloween question from Other Side, and it's, if you can, without caring what others think, what would you decide to wear as your Halloween costume? Just in general. If you didn't have to worry about like expectations or what other people thought of you.
Oh man. This is something that has been on my mind ever since I was 5 years old. There was this Batman costume that I really liked. I did not want to take it off. I want a really fucking cool Batman costume. Or yeah, just give me an awesome Guts Berserker armor one.
Because Berserk mentioned.
Berserk had to be mentioned. Also, Berserk was technically mentioned earlier with the In This World, because Phrannd knows
That's
Berserk.
true.
Hello,
That's true.
Phrannd, again.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Berserk.
I support that. How about you?
So if it, like, man, this is gonna be kind of obvious, but like, if I could get a werewolf mask that was just like not fursuit level, but like just better than Spirit Halloween, and then just get like some claws and then just tufts of fur that stick out of torn clothing, that'd be fine.
Hell yeah.
Sounds good.
I support it. I think for me, it's hard for the part that I'm struggling with is if nobody cared what you thought, because I already don't care. So like I could just wear anything that I would probably normally want to wear. So I'll just pick like, I guess my dream Halloween costume. I really want to do a Garrus cosplay at some point, and I would love to wear that as a costume. And I actually have like a good chunk of the things I need to put it together. It's just some of them are broken, and I have to fix them. And I'm not good with my hands. Bring it back to that. So,
are you talking about Garrus from Mass Effect?
Yes.
Man, that armor would be really hard to make, but could look really cool.
Yeah. So the fun fact is, I actually have a replica armor of his sitting in a box. It's just some of the pieces got warped. I got it secondhand from someone, and they were like, so, full disclosure, this stuff is kind of like messed up, but if you can like get it fixed, it'll look great. And I just have not gone around to the fixing part in like 6 or 7 years. So anyways, a long-term project I really need to get on, but
all those intense calibrations.
Very intense calibrations. Oh, awesome. Oh, and we have one more question, and I think this is more of a question for you than anything, Phrannd.
Cool.
So Galaxy asks, if you wanted to recommend the TF Tuesday podcast to someone, what episode would you tell them to start with?
Man. So one interesting, there's a lot of artists you've had on, and I've not listened to it, but Arania was really cool to hear from, also Kota. I was kind of laughing when Kota was on, because a lot of the shows that were referenced, I was like, that's me, for real. Like, about this, like, the background stuff.
Yeah.
but so probably that, just for fellow werewolf enthusiasts.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Okey-dokey.
Well, that is all the audience questions I had. I don't know if you had any questions for us.
No, I'm mostly just grateful that you folks agreed to have me on, and that it's been fun. You know, I kind of live a solitary life. Well, as far as expressing interests and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to just have an outlet to come and talk about niche subject matter in like a serious venue, like that takes it earnestly and isn't gonna like be throwing it back at you if you were to talk about it, kind of thing. So that's a rare opportunity for which I'm quite grateful.
No, I'm really glad, and it sucks that it's not as frequent, but I mean, we always want there to be more, and I think we kind of try to push for that as much as possible, because I think, you know, especially when we spend a lot of time in our heads about this thing that, you know, society doesn't always relish talking about, when that lives in our head all the time, it's important to have the outlet to express it. So I'm really glad that you were down to come on too and talk a little bit about your stuff and your art too.
Yeah.
All right.
That was appreciated. Yeah. Like, we try to take our spots here and there to still try to advance people's goals, because we've tried it before. Like, yeah, we give everybody shout outs and stuff, but even with, like, say, the To Change game, when we wanted to lend whatever support that we could, that's community building type stuff. So that's one of the things that we also try to do with this.
Yeah, and this is like a step towards the direction of, I hate to say legitimizing the subgenre, but I guess that's what you could frame it as. But having a podcast like this that talks about it in an earnest way is a step, I think, on the path of having like greater acceptance of this, at least within the furry community or like the monster fucker community or whatever online communities. Like, having this sort of thing could be a great, you know, movement in that direction of getting it more normalized and more accepted as a sub part of various fandoms.
Everybody movement.
Yeah.
Everybody movement. Awesome. Well, if people are looking for your stuff online, where can they find you, and where can they find your Kickstarter?
All right. So my Kickstarter, well, first let's start with overstaycomic.com. That is where you can read Overstay in its entirety. And the Kickstarter is kickstarter.com/projects/Phrannd, PHRANND/Overstay, and that'll get you to the Kickstarter. I also am Phrannd on Patreon, and I do post exclusive transformation sequences to the Patreon every month.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I have to say, in particular, one of the things I love about your Patreon is the names of the tiers. It jumped out to me immediately, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want on the podcast.
You can be in the Phrannd zone, or best friends, or I forget what other friend-related puns I have created over the time that I've been running that thing. That's one of those things, like, as an artist, when you make your Patreon or try to, like, put out a tip jar, and you're just like, is anybody going to throw anything in this? And it's one of those things that I've been kind of lucky to have validation in that there is a community there of like-minded werewolf aficionados that actually come in. There's an active Discord associated with it, and I'm really lucky to have the people that I can hang around with and chat and play video games with now because of that.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad for that, and I think everyone should go and support you over there. So
thank you.
I hope they take that to consideration.
Yeah,
Awesome.
completely.
Well, thank you so much, Phrannd, for coming on, and thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it, as always. And in the meantime, please continue to play Shadow and his wonderful game that I have not gone to play yet, and I'm still sad. Also, go and fucking buy Veilguard. I've waited 10 years for that motherfucking game, and I'm also not able to play it right now, and I'm dying inside, so, relish this over me. But in the meantime, I hope that you all continue to stay TFE and have a wonderful week, and we will see you back here again next week.
Yep. Remember that in this world, the darkness is blah, 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 blah. I got nothing good. All right, bye.
Bye.